Hello and welcome to Triangle BNI. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Oak City Tech gives their clients an edge over their competition with web and logo design that make them stand out. They increase brand awareness and generate leads with SEO and social media presence, and then convert those leads into clients with content creation and email marketing. Please go to oakcitytech.com. Let them know you are interested in growing your business or growing whatever you're working on, and tell Drago we said hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning, and each week we bring you a small business success story from Triangle BNI. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle is the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. More than 33 chapters and almost 600 members every week get together, and we help each other grow our small business. Each week, I bring you a guest, and this is one of the fun parts of going live every week is sometimes the guest just can't make it. And our guest was not able to make it today, so you get me for about an hour, and we're going to work on some stories. I know the folks that watch the show and listen, and I thank you very much for being part of this. This is a blast for me. It's my favorite hour of every week. And I know you enjoy the stories, whether it's work or family or fun. So we're just going to tell some stories. I know, Amnon, there's a way somebody could chime in. They could punch in. Where am I? There's a way they can,
Are you talking about calling in?
yeah, or
Yeah.
either call in or just send in something through the
To the
computer, right?
to the chat.
Yeah, to the
But
chat
there's
room.
the
Okay.
number.
919-518-9773. If you've got a good childhood story to tell, love to hear it. If you have kids and grandkids, there's a million stories to tell. I moved here in 1973. I've got an older sister and a younger brother. I think I've mentioned them before, but moved here in 1973 to a neighborhood called Fairfax Hills overall on Ivy Lane, right off of Falls and Noose. If you're familiar with, kind of right in between Millbrook Road and St. Raphael's. And it was a perfect neighborhood because there were 3 or 4 of everything. There were 3 people that wanted to play tennis every day, 3 or 4 people wanted to swim, 3 or 4 people wanted to play spades or hearts if it was rainy. We would go up to the pool every day. It was a 5-lane, 25-yard pool with 2 tennis courts, and we had a blast. I thought I hit the lottery growing up. My mom and I would have conversations over the years. She was always, as most parents do, you apologize at times for wanting to give your kids more. And I was 12, was I 12 at the time? So 7th grade. And I always tell my mom I had a bike, a tennis racket, and a pool. I didn't know we needed anything else. We never really went on vacation. We'd go visit my grandparents occasionally in Cleveland, Ohio, but we never went skiing. We never went to the beach. We never did any of that. So I didn't know that existed for the most part, or you're supposed to do it, and didn't really miss out on anything. So we had a blast. So we moved here in Ivy Lane, 1973, and like I said, that's where I first started playing tennis and swimming. My sister and I were on the tennis team. My brother and I were on the swim team. And to say that my brother and I were both members of the swim team would be doing an injustice to him because he was a competitor. He was a state-ranked backstroker, and I was just a part of the swim team. I enjoyed swimming. I'm not a fast swimmer, but I'm a good swimmer. So every day we would go up to the pool during the summertime. And you have to remember, in context, this was 1973. You probably could not do this today. But we would leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'd have swim trunks, pair of shorts, tennis shoes, something to play in our tennis racket, something to play tennis in, and we're gone for the day. Here's how it would work at our pool. If you know anybody that grew up in Fairfax Hills, you can call them or shoot them a note and confirm this. We'd go up to the pool and we would just do whatever all day long. Sometimes we'd come home for lunch. Sometimes we'd go to somebody else's house for lunch. And just, like I said, we would just go and, nobody really thought much of it. With parents, my mom would say, okay, I'll see you later. And what we would do is sometime about middle of the afternoon, about 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30, somewhere around there. Phone calls back then, for those of you who remember the pay phones, we had a pay phone at the pool, and it was a dime. So we would ask to borrow a dime from, we had a little snack bar there, and we would borrow a dime. We would call to the house and we would let it ring once and we would hang up. And that was the way everybody got in touch with their parents from the pool is one ringer. So the parents knew if the phone rang once and then you hung up, you call back to the pool. So my dad traveled. He was in sales, so he was gone most of the week, most of the time during the week. And mom would call and say, "Can I speak with one of the Manning kids?" And whoever called, my brother, my sister, or me, we'd say, "Hey, mom, it's me." And the only question was, "What time's dinner?" And mom would say 5:30 or 6 o'clock. And we'd say, "Okay, see you then." Hang up, and everybody would go about their business. That was the extent of conversing with your parents during the summertime when you're at the pool. Yeah, texting now. Well, everybody would be on their phone, and back then we were either playing in the pool or if there were adults there, um, there would be books. But with the kids, what we would do for if we're inside the pool, we're doing one of three things. If the weather's good, we would be swimming. And at the 50-minute mark of each hour, they'd blow the whistle and have adults swim. And that meant 18 and up. And you want to set off a bunch of kids 17 and younger. Just blow that whistle like, oh man, we're having so much fun. We're in the middle of a game. No matter what we're in, it's like, oh, we got to get out of the pool. So we get out of the pool, just hang out for 10 minutes, then they'd let us go back in. Basically, this was a chance for the lifeguards to take a break, which they would never admit, but we would tell them all the time, you just want 10 minutes off each hour. So if we're not swimming, we're playing four square. And it's a pretty simple game. If you take a square and put a line between the middle from east to west and a line from north to south, and you've got four squares in one. So you would have to bounce the ball once and then push it towards somebody, hoping to get it past them. Then they're out in the line. Everybody moves around. If you're the server, you get to decide who does what. And we would get creative and we'd slam the ball a couple of times. As we got older, we'd try to think, oh, let me one hop the ball over the fence into the tennis court. And then we'd pick the littlest kid, tell him he has to go get the ball and bring it back, which is the way it works. Kind of like freshmen in high school. If you remember your days back in high school, when you're the junior, senior, you picked on the freshman. And when you're a freshman, if you had an older brother or older sister, you knew kind of what to expect. So if we weren't swimming, we'd be playing four square. And after a while, that game sometimes would implode because somebody would just be a butthead about it and they'd take all the fun out of it. If we went up to the pool and it was raining that day or just yucky weather, we would sit underneath in the patio and play hearts or spades. Plain and simple, easy games to play. I think we played more spades than hearts usually, but we could just play for hours and people would come and go. The lifeguards were there. Sometimes we could swim. If there's thunder, you had to wait 15 minutes before you could go back in. So we had to find things to do, but we did. That was the beauty of growing up back then is we had to figure things out. In the neighborhood, we'd get together and we'd play wiffle ball. We would start with a perfectly good wiffle ball and a perfectly good bat. And after about an hour and a half of guys just beating the daylights out of the wiffle ball, it would break. So every yard we were playing in, we'd go into the house and we'd get tape, hopefully duct tape, but we could any kind of tape, freezer tape, masking tape, anything like that. And we'd tape it up again. We'd tape it real good. We'd go back out and play, however long it took to play, to break the tape and break the ball again. We'd come back in and we'd tape it again. And we could play for 3 or 4 hours with just one wiffle ball with tape on it. And everybody knew the game. If we're playing in the front yard, that tree is first base, the light post is second base, that bush is third base, and here's home. You just did it. You had to be creative. It was a lot of fun. Great way to make friends and great way to kind of be a problem solver and do spatial relations. If we played out in the street, this car was first base, that manhole cover was second base, this car was third, and here was whatever it was home plate. Sometimes we had something to put down, sometimes we didn't. And we'd just play in the yard for hours. We'd play kickball. We'd play two-hand touch football. We were playing in front of the Medlin's yard one day, and they have, I believe it's probably still there. I've not been in a while, but at the time, they had a really nice 5.5 foot tall light post right in the middle of the yard. And you can see where I'm going with this. One of the guys, I forget who it was, either Mike or Greg, Mike Morris or Greg Fleming, somebody, one of those guys, just was going across the middle for a pass and just collided with the light post. And he laid there for a couple of minutes. Turned out he was okay. But back then, you just kind of wait around, make sure everybody's okay. You good? You need to sit out? Okay, let's continue the game. There's no drama related. There's no texting, no like, oh my God, this happened. We just kind of got them played. That's all we knew. If somebody was bleeding, they would go home, but if they're just shook up, hey, you know, rub some dirt on it or whatever our dad used to tell us to do, and we would continue playing the game. So that was a beautiful part of growing up in Fairfax Hills. There were a couple of people there that were crucial to the evolution of the kids and the maturation of the kids, and I wanted to call them out. I hope maybe somebody knows them, maybe they don't. Jack Huber, who died a few months back, was the tennis coach and just a wonderful, wonderful, kind man. If you've ever tried to coach about 16 to 20 knucklehead teenagers, kind of takes some patience, and Jack was that way. He would work with us on the side. He would always give us good, some good feedback, always a compliment, and then something we needed to work on. So he was wonderful. Kay Anthony was one of the moms. And every neighborhood, actually every kid growing up needs this type of parent that would love on them and hug on them and then just lay into them because they were being a knucklehead while hugging on them, telling them, you need to quit doing that. That's not a smart move. And she was wonderful. Her kids, John Anthony and Angela Anthony and Allison Anthony, wonderful family. The dad, John Sr., John Jr., wonderful tennis players, had good matches with them growing up. But Kay Anthony, John, Allison, and Angela's mom was just one of those moms every neighborhood needed. You went to her to ask any questions. You knew she was going to give you the truth. If you can handle the truth, you knew you were going to get it from Kay Anthony. She was wonderful. And then Henry Kidd, Henry retired from NC State, worked in the PE department. He was the head lifeguard and the swim coach, and he was the man. Sometimes he would not hug us when he told us we were being a knucklehead. He would tell us sometimes just to go put your nose in the fence and smell the flowers. And that was basically, he was telling us he'd had enough of us and just go do that. Henry also taught life-saving class. So if you wanted to be a lifeguard, you had to take the standard life-saving class, which made sense. And I can't remember if he told me this or somebody gave me this bit of advice. But when I was taking the class, I think we were 15 when we took it, maybe 16. And Henry was the guy you had to save. And Henry I'm standard size. I'm about 6 feet, depending on who you ask. I think I'm at 6 feet. My doctor's office says I'm 5'11" and 7/8. But anyways, and Henry was a little bit bigger than I am. He was about 6'3", maybe 6'2" and a half, 6'3". Had a little bit of weight on me because he was an adult back then. And he was out in the deep end, the 10-foot, and you had to go save him. That's all you had to do. You had to get him to the side, and there were a number of ways to do that. Somebody told me one time how to do that. If somebody's really struggling, underneath your armpit, there's a muscle right here. And I grabbed Henry's one day, and I just hung on for dear life, and that stopped him from flailing. And I got him to the side. He was none too happy about that, but I appreciated a tip I got from somebody. So if you really, if you're wrestling with somebody or you're trying to get them to calm down, there's that muscle right underneath your armpit. Man, grab that. That's smarts. So those are the type of things they taught us growing up. But Jack Huber, Kay Anthony, Henry Kidd, wonderful. Joni Eichelberger was the assistant swim coach. We had a blast because they would tell us when we were knuckleheads and when we weren't. And our pool we swam against North Hills, North Ridge, Northbrook. What's the other one on Millbrook there? Quail Hollow and places like that. And we would go, most of the neighborhoods were bigger than ours, but we had a pretty good team. We held our own, but it's just a lot of fun. The 6 and under kids, our pool was 25 yards long, and the 6 and under kids would only swim half the length. So they would get the adults out, or the adults, I say the older kids, the teenage kids, and we'd go catch the 6 and unders, and we'd stand because we were tall enough to stand halfway through the pool, and we'd just catch them, and that was the race. So we're at Kay Anthony's funeral a couple of years ago, and her youngest daughter, Allison, was one of the 6 and under swimmers. And I'd never met Allison's daughter, have not seen her since, but Allison introduced me to her daughter. And here's what I do. I love stirring the pot. And I looked at Allison's daughter and I said, would you like me to tell you stories about the time I caught your mom when she was a 6 and under swimmer in the pool? And her daughter, of course, just busts out laughing. Allison just turns red. She goes, we're not going to talk about that. But those are the fun these I like doing when I meet some of these kids. But Fairfax Hills was the best place to grow up. Because like I said, there were 2, 3, 4 of everything. You could always find something to do with somebody. You could go by somebody's house, knock on the door. The parents knew the kids. It was not a problem. Just wonderful neighborhood to grow up in. While we were living in Fairfax, my dad's parents would visit from Cleveland, Ohio, usually every summer. And my grandmother, we called her Gayo because my sister tried to say grandma one day and it came out Gayo, and that's what you get. So she was happy with that because nobody else was called Gayo that we found out while we were growing up. And my grandfather was grandpa, and Gayo was just outgoing, wonderful, typical grandmother, hug on you all the time, give you all the compliments in the world, cook something for you. But she was also the one that could just look at me, or I think it worked with my brother to a point, but she would just look at me, and nobody, only my mother called me Michael. Nobody else called me Michael, unless my dad yelled it because I was in trouble. But my mom, I was Michael to my mom, and I'm Mike to everybody else, which is fine. Mom passed a couple years, or last year, so missing her a bunch. 2 years ago, it's 2020. Yeah, look at me, can't even keep up with everything. And so Gayo, whenever she wanted to make a point, she'd say, if I was, and I was not the problem child in the family, let me say that, she would just say Michael, and I'd stop and go, I'm sorry, Gail. I didn't even know what she was going to tell me. I did. I'm like, I'm sorry. But she was the ultimate grandmother. She was just the best. So grandpa was a little quieter, kept to himself. My Gayo, this would have been back in like 76 or 77, won a trip to the Isle of Majorca, which is off the coast of Spain. So I have no idea how she won the trip, but her and three friends were going, and she asked my grandfather if he wanted to go, and this was over New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and a couple days on each side. And he said no, he didn't want to go because he didn't want to miss the New Year's Day football games. It's like, man, they play them every year. Because back then, I don't think we had VCR, so there's no way of watching it again. But it just his type. He just wired that way. He didn't want to go. So when they would come visit, my mom, my sister, my brother, me, and Gayo would go errand running, go to lunch, do something. And Grandpa never wanted to leave the house. Just kind of a quiet guy, but he just wasn't real social or anything, just didn't want to leave the house. So we didn't think anything of it as standard operating procedure. We never knew what he did sitting at home by himself. He probably watched TV, probably napped a little bit. We had a good recliner. My dad got some serious nap time in. And one day, we had a ceramic cookie jar on the counter, and my brother and I would practice lifting the lid quietly so we could steal a cookie because we got 2 cookies every day, no questions asked, usually for after dinner. But we got 2 cookies, doesn't matter what they were, Oreos, homemade chocolate chip cookies, didn't matter. You got 2, and that was it. So my brother and I would practice for hours, and you would have to hold on to the lid and just slowly, you had to leave one side connected to the jar. And then you slowly raised up one side and tried to stick your hand down in there, grab a cookie, pull it out, and then slowly touch the other side back down so it wouldn't make any noise. We think our batting practice was about 50%, probably wasn't that good. So we came home one day, we'd been out, and I don't know who opened the cookie jar, but somebody opened it, put it back down. It did not make a sound. And if you're familiar with the ceramic cookie jars, if you put the lid down, it made a little bit of noise. You knew somebody was in it. And I forget who picked it up and put it back down, and there's no noise. And also everybody's looked around like, all right, hang on a sec. The greatest grandfather move I have ever seen. My grandpa put scotch tape around the top of the ceramic jar so he could open and close that anytime he wanted to get any cookies. Grandpa, I salute you on that. That was the greatest grandfather move I'd ever seen. And the look on his face was, I can't believe I got away with it that long, but he was very proud of himself. So those are the neat memories I have growing up when grandparents come to visit. When I was 16, my mom decided it was time for us to go to Disney down in Orlando. And 3 of us were like, okay, Dad wasn't going to go. He was traveling. So mom and the 3 kids load up in the car, and we head down 95. And I'd just gotten my driver's license. So I'm 16 and a half or so. And I'm like, sure, drive all I want. And I'm counting cars and making sure I pass more cars that have passed me, but I don't tell anybody that. And I kept tracking. I think I passed 5 or 8 more cars than passed me. So I'm 16 and a half. It's a good day, you know? So we go down there, we visit Disney and everything. And we were down there maybe 2 days, and I don't remember much of that. But on the way back, if you're familiar with Florida in the St. Augustine area, is Flagler College. And one of my mom's high school and college friends worked there. and I can't, it's one of 2, and I can't remember which one it was. So we stopped there one day, and mom and my sister Sharon went in to meet my mom's friend, and my brother and I played tennis. My brother is almost a year and a half younger than me, and he was typical little brother. He's a pain in the butt. Nobody wants little brothers around, especially bigger brothers. He'd want to hang out because we're so close in age. He'd want to hang out with me and my friends, and I would have none of that. And so I just beat on him a bunch. I was not a real good big brother a lot of the times. But I was a tennis player growing up, was on the tennis team in high school. He didn't play much tennis. Well, he said, "Hey, let's go play tennis." So I thought, all right, here comes the big brother lesson that says, you know what? You're not anything yet. You're just a little brother. And we played, and I think I tried so hard to beat him to death that he beat me. And this would have been 1977. This is the year 2020. And about once a year, he'll bring it up. We'll be at a family gathering or something, and Florida, the state of Florida will come up, tennis will come up, something will trigger that, and he'll just say, and he deserves every bit of this. He'll say, "Yeah, I enjoyed playing tennis in Florida that one time," and just it's made me so mad. I don't think I said a word to anybody on the way back. Was not a good loser at the time, but we stopped and played, and I thought, all right, little guy, here comes your lesson, and that was just that was a bad, bad day for me. And again, he still brings it up as he should. Childhood memories are wonderful. Those are some of mine. Now my boys, I think most people that watch regularly know I'm a grandfather. My grandson Oliver lives in Charlotte, and my wife and I were going. We do our regular shopping at Sam's or Walmart on Saturdays. So we're headed to Walmart this past Saturday, and we get and my son FaceTimes us, so it's a different ring on your phone when you FaceTime. So we sat in the car for like 20 minutes, talked to him and Oliver on the phone. Usually, when this happens, when he wakes Oliver up from his nap, he'll close the bedroom door, get Oliver, wake him up, get him changed. And then while Oliver can't get out of his room, Travis will call us and he'll hold the phone up and we'll talk. We'll see Oliver and we'll talk to him and he'll wave at us sometimes. He'll kiss to us sometimes. And sometimes he plays bashful and just doing whatever he needs to do. And so that was a fun 20 minutes of just talking to him and just having that moment. So this grandparent club is the bomb. If you're in it, you know what I mean. If you're not in it, I hope you have a chance to get in it because it's just cool having it's awesome having a grandchild. And I when we go visit in Charlotte about every month, I just whatever he wants to do, we do. But what I didn't realize, I knew how the math worked and how biology worked and everything. It's like, oh, my kid's having a kid. But you don't realize how cool of a visual that is until you see your kid holding their kid. And that it took me about 20 minutes in the hospital room the day Oliver was born. By the way, he turned 19 months on Saturday, but who's counting days? Oh, yeah, that would be me. So anytime anybody asks, I stop and do quick math. I tell you pretty much to the day how old he is. So he's 19 months and 2 days. But it took me about an hour or so in the hospital room for that to click in that, oh, I'm not looking at my grandson. I'm looking at my son holding his son, which is really cool. My youngest son's middle name is Murphy. My brother's son is middle name Murphy, and Oliver's middle name is Murphy, and that all is for my mom because her maiden name was Murphy. So anytime you can pass on a family name is pretty cool. So every time they get together, which is not very often because Oliver's in Charlotte, Cameron's now in Lakeland, and my nephew lives here in Raleigh, but we always get a picture of the Murphy boys together. So those three will have that link forever and ever and ever. And mom knew Cameron and Ryan were Murphys, but she died about 5 months before Oliver was born, which was very tough on me, just that they never got to meet, but she knew what his name was going to be. Travis and his wife, Sarah, told no one what Oliver's name was going to be. And when I say no one, I mean no one except for my mom, because when they said goodbye to her, she died from cancer. And when they got their goodbye with her a couple days before she died, they told mom what Oliver's name was going to be. And I thought that was cool. I didn't know that until Oliver was born. So they kept everybody, no grandparents, none of their siblings, nobody knew what his name was. So it was pretty cool walking into the delivery room not the delivery room, their room in Charlotte. And Travis held up Oliver and said, "I'd like to present to you Oliver Murphy Manning." So that's pretty cool. So thinking back on the days with my boys growing up, and I gave this speech this morning at Toastmasters about if you have ever coached or had a kid play in T-ball, it is the greatest level of sports ever. You have kids that have no idea what's going on. They don't even know a scoreboard exists. They could care less about it. The parents aren't to the point yet where they're a pain in the butt telling the coach and the umpire, hey, you need to do this because my kid's really good and they're going to play in the NBA or the NFL one day. It's just not going to happen. So they're not really critiquing anybody yet. They just want their kid to play. And in T-ball, everybody plays. The two things kids want to do in T-ball is they want to slide into any base in the dirt and get their uniform dirty, and they want to know what the snack is at the end of the game. Occasionally, one of the moms would try to slide in something healthy, which just doesn't play with anybody. Kids, they got the little Popsies, the frozen ice pops, some sort of candy. It didn't matter. They just wanted what's for. They would all huddle after the game. They would not. Could care less what happened. They would just huddle around the cooler because the team mom of the week, whoever's bringing the snacks, what'd you bring? They would get a juice box and whatever the snack was. And again, they're kids. They could care less. They just weren't interested in anything healthy. And word got around after about the second time one of the moms tried to slide one of those healthy snacks through that wasn't going to fly. But that's all those kids wanted to do is they wanted to slide and get dirty and they wanted the snack. And most of them were so small that when you put the batting helmet on it, the helmet would touch their shoulders. That's how small they were. And that's how big the helmets were. It was like the very first time we ever saw Darth Vader with that big old helmet on. It was watching these kids play T-ball. So, and again, if you've been to T-ball, you know what I'm talking about. So a couple good stories on this. When I coached my youngest son, Cameron, in his second year of T-ball. The year before, he'd been coached by a guy named Coach Pete. And the first year then I was going to coach, I went to the draft with Coach Pete, never drafted a team before, and I sat next to him. So we're going through the first couple rounds. We're picking kid we think maybe could just even catch the ball. That's what you look for first is a pitch. You need a pitcher and a first baseman that can catch and throw because most of the balls are hit to one of those two, and you're good to go. We're sitting there about the ninth round. I think these teams had 12 or 13 players on it. And we're sitting there about the ninth round. Pete slides a sheet of paper over to me. It's got, next to a kid's name, it's got the letters GLM. And he goes, all right, he goes, Mike, this is real important. You know what this is? I said, Pete, have no idea. It stands for good looking mom. And he told me that, and I bust out laughing. He goes, because the kid ain't going to help you in round 10. You may as well get a good looking mom who could be a good team. So I pass that story along to everybody I know that's coaching sports. Probably not politically correct in this day and age, but it was funny as all that time because he looked at me and he's right. In the 10th or 11th round of T-ball with 5-year-olds, kid's not going to help you. You just hope he scores a run. He can tell his grandparents he scored a run, but GLM, that was hilarious. So one day we're playing, and it was very windy. We played at Rehoboth Baptist Church in Tucker, Georgia, right outside Atlanta. Wonderful community, wonderful atmosphere for the kids to grow up in. Very nurturing, competitive, instructional time for basketball and baseball. So on the T-ball field, we're playing one time, and it was very windy. And I had a second baseman, don't remember his name, but he's bent over and he took his glove off his left hand and was holding it by his right hand and just swiping the dirt down between his legs to get the dirt to go up in the air. It looked like the funnel from the Wizard of Oz because the wind was blowing so good that dirt would get up in the air and just spin around. We're like, Billy, look, the batter. And he's like, oh, okay. Puts the glove back on. But baseball itself can be boring at certain levels because if nobody hits you the ball, nothing you can do. It's even more boring at T-ball because not many people are hitting the ball and they're 5 and 6 years old. So their attention span is zero anyway. So he just took his glove one day and we're dying laughing because you have to kind of tell him you can't get on him because he's 5 years old. He's bored, right? I mean, most of us were bored too, but he just swinging that glove in the dirt, getting the dirt up in here. I love that. In T-ball, everybody plays in the field. So you have your 6 infield positions, and then however big the rest of your team is, they all go in the outfield. It could be 4, it could be 6, it could be 8 in the outfield. Look like Noah's Ark. two in left field, two in left center, two in center, two in right. Just there are kids everywhere. And they were standing next to their friend because, again, in the outfield, there's even less going on than the infield. So they're trying to stay occupied and it gets boring out there. So standing out there talking to their friends. Some of them are looking at home plate, some of them aren't. Some of them are holding their gloves, some of them aren't. So one day we look into left field, and it's our son Cameron and one of his friends, and they're trying to throw their glove over the outfield fence. That on its own was funny. What wasn't funny is what was past the fence, and it was a drop to a ravine. And we all know who was going to be called on to go get the glove was one of the dads, and that kept me in the mix. I wasn't real happy. But what was funny about it is the moms were yelling at the kids to stop doing that. And then the kids, again, they're 6 years old, so they turn around and they give you that kid look like, what? We were just having fun. We hurt nobody. And so they realized that they probably, and I don't know what order they realized it in, but they knew two things were supposed to happen. One is they're supposed to pay attention to the batter or the game, and two is they weren't supposed to throw their glove over the fence. But in all honesty, I don't know which one was more important to them at that point in time. But they got the point. Don't throw your glove over the fence. The other thing that was fun to happen in the outfield was chasing the ball down. There's always one kid that could hit the ball to the fence on a couple of hops or roll it all the way out there. So we had an outfielder one time. This was in right center field, and he ran to the fence. He was the first one there, and he put his glove down on the ball and trapped it to the ground, and nobody could get it, and he wasn't going to throw it in. In the meantime, all the runners were going around the base. This was 1996. I think the kids are still running around the bases. I mean, the kid never threw the ball into this time, but he just held it out. He held his glove over the ball, pinned it to the ground, and started yelling, "Mine!" And all the other kids came over there trying to get the ball, and it was hysterical. Again, what are you gonna do? There's nothing you can do when a kid out there doesn't want to throw the ball in. One runner scores, two scores, three scores. It doesn't matter. You just have to realize where you are, and you have to keep everything in context as a coach and a parent. What are you getting mad at? He ran and got the ball. He was supposed to run and get the ball. It just he didn't finish the play by throwing the ball in. But again, these T-ball games are 20-19 and 20-16 anyways. So you knew you were going to get your 3 runs back. I thought that was hilarious. The best I told you about my grandfather earlier putting scotch tape on the ceramic cookie jar. That was the greatest grandfather move ever. The second greatest grandfather move ever happened at a T-ball game. This was a game going on before Cameron's game, and so we're walking around, we're there early, trying to get the kids just to throw and warm up, and that's not working much either because there's so much stuff going around. They're going on that they're just not focused, and again, they're 5 and 6, so it is what it is. So this grandfather was coaching first base, I happened to be standing by first base there just kinda watching. I'm sure I was probably scouting, but I'll tell you I was watching. And Billy's little kid named Billy got on first base. Grandfather said, "Billy, don't run until I tell you to run, okay?" And Billy shakes his head, scared to death. But the coach told him, "Don't run till I tell you to run." So the batter, it's T-ball, so the ball is literally sitting on a tee because nobody's pitching the ball to him. So it's sitting there, and the batter hits the ball and takes off running. The grandfather, coaching first, turned to look at the runner, and he's waving him to first base, "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" And the batter gets to first base. Oh, yeah, there's 2 kids on first base now because he didn't tell Billy to run, so Billy didn't run. So Billy stayed on first base with the batter. They tag Billy out, and just the tears come streaming. Oh my gosh. I felt so bad for Billy. But the grandfather did the great thing. He told the ump timeout. He picked up Billy. He walked to the grandstands where Billy's team's fans are sitting and explained this was not Billy's fault. It was his fault. Billy did what he was supposed to do. He was told not to run until he was told to run, and Billy did nothing wrong. And I love that move because it was the grandfather owning the move. But Billy was none too happy. I don't know if he got over that day. I don't know if he still remembers it, but I do. And again, this was 24 years ago. It was just a great move. The grandfather picked him up because he knew he had messed up, and there was no way around that, but he owned it, and I respect the heck out of that. T-ball is funny because things happen that you don't expect to happen. There's a batter up, batter hits the ball, and the batter takes off for third base, and everybody's screaming, trying to get him to go to first base. He's having none of that. He is making a beeline for third base. And you know what? Kudos to the defense because they saw him running there. So they picked up the ball, tried to throw him out at third base instead of throwing it at first base. So he beat the throw to third base, and the umpire, and this is why I love T-ball, because in context, the umpire did what he was supposed to do. The batter beat the throw to third base, so the umpire called him safe and moved him over to first base to be the runner where he should have been. But it was so funny. The kid was so proud that he had beaten the throw to third base, had no idea he went to the wrong base, I don't believe. And the parents, everybody screamed for him to run first. But at the end of the day, the umpire did the right thing because the kid hustled. He beat the actual throw to third base, called him safe, and then moved him over to first base. And people just cheered. It was just good stuff. That's another reason why T-ball is so good, because you have to keep it in perspective of we're just trying to teach these kids how to hit and how to run, how to catch, and how to throw. And some sort of semblance of, okay, we're out in the field. Okay, we're at bat. The other thing is in the dugout, they will whether it's their turn to bat or not, they want to pick up a bat. And if you've ever been in a dugout full of 5 and 6-year-olds, holding bats is not a good thing. You just tell them to put the bats down. We stuck them in the fence and they had to sit down in order of their batting order so they knew who they were supposed to be up after. So, which was pretty cool to do. It turned, somebody's learning something on that, but it was in the dugout with bats, not good. Our oldest son, Travis, so Rehoboth, we had the T-ball field, then the coach pitch / kid pitch field, and then you move to the other side of the complex, and that's the first of the big fields where it's all kid pitch, and these guys are starting to get into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and starting to develop some, and at that age, there's always 1 or 2 kids that physically separate themselves from the rest of the field. They're 4 inches taller, they're heavier, they're better, but there's always that 1, 2, or 3 kids that sets themselves apart. So Travis was batting one day, and their team was pretty good. He and Travis and Jesse, his friend from first grade, they were always in the same class from first grade on. They're still friends. Both are parents now. They can, talking with social media. So it's a cool story. So Jesse's dad, Ron, and I, if you coach, you got your kid automatically. You didn't have to draft your kid. You got him. Well, Travis and Jesse were always 2 of the best 5 or 6 kids in each league, whether it's basketball or baseball. So Ron and I usually coached a bunch. A lot of the other parents weren't real happy about that, but Travis and Jesse wanted to play with each other, so we did that. So Travis is up to bat one day, and this big kid, I think it was CJ, just one of those kids that you knew was different. And he was the pitcher, and he just plunked Travis right in the ribs on his left side. So Travis gets to first, and he's kind of, just shifting around, trying to make sure everything's okay. Now, I think as the next batter up got a hit, and it went to the right side, went to right field, so that allowed Travis to round second base and come to third, where I'm the base coach at third base. So everything settles in, runner gets safe at first, Travis is at third, and there's 1 out. First of all, I asked Travis how he's doing, and he's just with a great dramatic effect, which most of us would have done at that age. He's like, "Oh, I think my ribs moved." It's like, "I think you'll be okay." Said, "Can you do this?" Made him raise his arm. He was fine. So, but he was good. But it did hurt. I know that. I think that's the first time he'd really been hit by kid pitching at that speed. So he's on third base, 1 out. That's very important to this story. So I told Travis, there's no force. You do not have to run. Don't run until I tell you. Now, in Little League Baseball, there are fans sitting in the stands, and they want action, and they're going to scream whatever they want to scream. So the batter hits the ball, and all the fans stood up, "Run, Travis!" And Travis took off. And it was a ground ball to the infield. They threw to home plate. They take Travis out. He was not happy. I, of course, was not happy because I told him, "Don't move," because I wasn't going to send him. The ball didn't go out of the infield. So I stopped for a moment. Travis went back to the dugout, and I asked time for the umpire. I went to our grandstands, and I told the parents, "Thank you for your interest. Appreciate the support, but don't scream anything until the kid knows what he's supposed to do from his coach." Travis was not running on that play. He was going to be out, which, oh, yeah, by the way, happened. So don't scream to these kids because they're going to hear whatever's loudest, they're going to do. So wait till you see the player do something, then cheer for that. So I was not happy with that. Travis wasn't happy he got thrown out, but we had a good laugh about that. My boys have my parents are both gone, but my in-laws are both still with us, and they're 86 and 83, and they live in San Antonio. So back in the day, my father-in-law is a retired Air Force colonel. They retired in San Antonio in 1984, and they bought a motorhome. Well, excuse me, he had a couple of careers. He was from South Texas. He decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to farm some land down there. That was a half of a good idea. Didn't turn out quite what he wanted it to be. It was a lot of effort going into farming, if you know anybody's in farming. So once he fully retired, they bought a motorhome and they just traveled around the US and they'd go to Canada. They drove up the Alcan a couple times to Alaska. And they came to visit us one time in Atlanta. And again, I tell people this, I've told my in-laws to their face, I tell people this anywhere, anytime. I hit the mother load of in-laws. They are the best. They could live next door to us, they could live with us. It wouldn't matter. Love my in-laws to death. My mother-in-law is one of my favorite types of females in that they are all the confidence in the world. They'll bust your chops. They're walking around. They got the confidence. They'll say anything to anybody. Those are the type of females. If I look back on my life, who I'm attracted to be around, or who I'm drawn to be around. And I love my mother-in-law because she's got all the confidence in the world, and she has a smaller filter than I have on, and I rarely leave home with my filter, and my mother-in-law is even better at it. So we're at Stone Mountain, Georgia. If you've ever been to the east side, ever been to Atlanta, visited Stone Mountain, cool place. Go hiking to the top. There's a wall of gum. I don't know how that started. People take gum out and leave it on the wall there. All kind of cool things. But it's a wonderful activity for families. Good exercise. So my in-laws are named John and Shirley. So they visit one of their many visits, and again, they're the best. They would always come see us in the motorhome. Kids loved it. They have 4 grandchildren, 2 boys from me and Becky, and 2 girls from their youngest daughter, Holly, and her husband, Jim. And my in-laws said when each of the grandkids graduated from high school, they were going to take them on a trip in the motorhome. So Travis, our oldest son, is the oldest of the 4 grandkids. So he graduated high school in what, 94? Where am I? He was born in 86. Do the math. I think it was 94. So John and Shirley came to pick him up. We were in Daytona Beach at the time. Both boys graduated high school in Daytona Beach. Shout out to Spruce Creek High School in Port Orange. So they got Travis, they took him, they went to the Air Force Academy, they went up to Banff, they went all like a week and a half they were gone. So, but it was just Travis and his grandparents. Couldn't have been a better time. Cool thing to do for the grandparents. And then their next grandchild is Nicole, and then our son Cameron, and they're 6 months apart and thick as thieves since they've known each other. They're the type that don't see each other for 2 years or talk for a month. They just pick up right where they left off. So they've always had that relationship. So my in-laws thought, here's a good idea. They're both graduating. They waited till they both graduated the same year, even though Nicole, I think, was 6 months older. Nicole is 6 months older. I think they graduated the same year. If they didn't, somebody will point that out to me here eventually. Once I let family know I talked about this today on the show. So John and Shirley got Nicole and Cameron to go on the same trip, and they had a blast. Again, those two, they could stay up all night talking, and they had a blast. And then came our youngest niece of the youngest of their grandkids. It's our youngest niece. And Caitlin was 3 years, I think, behind Nicole and Cameron. So she cut a great deal with her grandparents. She said, I don't want to go on the motorhome. I want to go on a cruise. Well, guess what? We had a family reunion on the cruise. So kudos to Caitlin because we enjoyed the cruise. Anyway, Shirley grew up, my mother-in-law grew up in Oklahoma. And back then, there's even less to do outside than what we could do. So she taught herself how to sit on the handlebars of a bike and ride backwards. All right. So if you've ever seen that, just picture somebody sitting on the handlebars, facing the rear tire, holding the handlebars and pedaling. And she would just go around, around, around. Very impressive. I would have never done that. So one day they were visiting, this would have been 1996, 1997, and Shirley would have been about 60 years old. On the back of the motorhome, there was a bike. So they actually 2 bikes. I think it was 2 bikes, so they could ride bikes wherever they camp. Yeah, like I said, they drive all around the US, and they towed a car, and they would have 2 bikes with them. So we're talking, so it's me, Becky, and the boys, and John and Shirley. We're all out talking. We're with John talking or something like that, and all of a sudden we hear, "Grandma," and one of the boys had called out to their grandmother, who at the age of 60 was sitting on the handlebars of her bike, riding around the parking lot of Stone Mountain, Georgia, by backwards and just grinning ear to ear. And alls we heard then was from John. We heard this loud bellow, "Shirley, get off that bike. You're going to hurt yourself." And again, Shirley, why I love her, she would have nothing to do with that. She just rode around that parking lot, just showing off. And the boys howled. They thought that was one of the coolest things that they could think of doing, is watching their grandmother sit backwards on a bike, riding around the parking lot at Stone Mountain, Georgia, which was a wonderful, wonderful thing for them to watch happen. They've been blessed with both sets of grandparents. We would go, my folks lived here, so we'd come up and visit whenever we went to San Antonio. I remember the first time John and Shirley got there, they bought a hot tub for the house they moved into once they retired. And so the kids, again, 4 grandkids. I mean, if you didn't turn the heat on, it was a swimming pool, right? So you don't turn the heat on during the day so the kids could swim in it. And at nighttime, you turn the heat on so the adults could pour a drink and go out there and have a good time. So I have wonderful memories from my childhood of growing up in Fairfax Hills, my grandfather putting the tape on the ceramic cookie jar, and then losing to tennis against my little brother, and then watching my kids grow up. Wonderful childhood memories of theirs. We have more. And so I've enjoyed sharing these with you today. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Please go to oakcitytech.com and let them know what you're up to. They can help you with a website, whether it's personal or professional. Tell Drago we said hi. He's been a wonderful friend and sponsor of the show. We hope maybe some of you taking advantage of that. But hopefully next week I've got a guest scheduled. I believe they will be here. Somebody will be here. But I've enjoyed today. I hope you have wonderful childhood memories you can share with folks. And I will see you next week on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.